Well, good morning, folks. It's Ken David Stewart, and I'm here with my podcast. It's been a while. I'm going to do a new one today on a review of Larry Norman's Copper Wires. Now, for those of you who don't know, Larry Norman, I have to say was because he's passed away, the pioneer of Christian rock music. To the best of my knowledge, there was no one before him that was doing this kind of music, so he really stuck out his neck and took awful lot of flack over the years from various sources, but still pushed through. And, for those who know, he has some very loyal fans to this day. Now, I was going to read off my script or my WordPress document, but I decided today I just play it by ear because you already got the text, that you can read of my review. And okay, what can I say? Copper Wires. Now, first of all, it may be a little hard to get a copy of this. You have to search the internet. If you look on Amazon or eBay, you're going to find this to be extremely pricey if they have it. We're talking hundreds of dollars. And because it's considered a collector's item. Now, I was fortunate enough to search around and find this site called Discogs, in which they have a bunch of independent CD dealers than collectors, and I was able to find one in, they said near mint, but it was actually mint condition when it arrived, a copy of Copper Wires for $35. Now that was, believe me, going according to what eBay and Amazon was selling this for, this was a really good deal. And I used to have this CD about 2 decades ago. What happened to it, I don't know. But, it was always one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Larry Norman CDs. I can still remember buying it at a Christian bookstore. At that time I was already into different Christian rock bands like the Res Band, Petra, Daniel Band, a whole bunch of them. Striper, but I kept hearing about this Larry Norman guy, that he was the originator, and I found it was hard even then to locate any of his work where you could buy one of his CDs or albums, vinyl albums. So anyway, both times I kind of had a hard time finding it, but I was glad I did eventually pursue it and find them. Now, the first track on Larry Norman's Copper Wires is called I Love You, which is really a cover of a song originally recorded by the British Invasion group of the 1960s called The Zombies. They did a very good version of this song, but I really like Larry's version because when I hear Larry's version, I feel more like he's talking. He could be talking to an individual, but he could be talking to God also. There's kind of a dual meaning behind that song. We've got a second great track is called In the Garden. Very good song. Third track, Heaven Wants to Bless You. Very positive message to that song. And one of the things I'm going to of note on this whole CD is how well recorded and well produced it is. You're probably going to want a decent set of either stereo speakers, or if you use a computer like me, a desktop, you're going to want a good set of computer speakers. Don't go cheap, because if you really like music, don't go cheap. The ones I got from Logitech were over $100, but worth every penny, especially to get the sonic bass boost. It really makes all the difference in the world when you put on a CD, and you can tell when a CD is really well recorded. And this one certainly is. Now, Larry, for his fourth track, does a song called "Oh Little Sister," which reminds me a bit of a Bob Dylan song on Desire with a different title. Now, there's no doubt in my mind that Larry Norman, I think, had met Bob Dylan, and at the very least was very impressed with Dylan's both songwriting and his recordings, and that Bob Dylan was a big influence on his work. And later on in the album, he does cover one of Dylan's songs called "When He Returns" from Bob Dylan's so-called gospel period, about 79 to 81, in which Bob Dylan recorded 3 gospel records: "Slow Train Coming," "Saved," and "Shot of Love." Now, these 3 albums at the time were not particularly well received, probably not particularly well big sellers today, though their reviews have improved. And it basically was because a lot of people couldn't stand the thought of Bob Dylan becoming a Christian, because musically they were good albums. Now, I'm going to do a review later on, not today, but later on the Trouble No More Volume 13 bootleg series released from Bob Dylan, and it is basically a live compilation of the best tracks from 79 to 81 that were recorded at his concerts. Just for a little teaser, I will say it is an exceptional collection. Okay, but we're not talking about Bob Dylan today. We're talking about Larry Norman. Now, he also does a traditional Christian song that many artists have recorded called "People Get Ready." Really, really a beautiful song, and Larry and his band definitely do justice to it. Another favorite, track number 7, "Turn, Turn, Turn." Now, this was written by Pete Seeger, the folk singer. I believe he recorded it. And the Byrds did sort of an electric version in the 60s, which is still one of my favorite versions today. And the lyrics were actually taken from the book of Ecclesiastes. Now, the next song is also well known in some parts as a Christian gospel song, "Oil in My Lamp." And Larry does a rock version of it. And the part I like the most is near the end of the song, near the last verse sort of thing. You can see the influence of Mick Jagger on Larry Norman. It was hard for him to conceal his joy at imitating Mick a little bit, and he tried to kind of change his singing voice in the last verse to try and put in the phrasing and mannerisms that Mick Jagger does. And it's really hilarious because he does it rather well. Okay, so that's why "Oil in My Lamp" will always be one of my favorites there. He has a few more tracks. Number 9, "I'm a Pilgrim." 10, "Sleepwalk," which is an instrumental, which is odd, because very rarely do rock artists, since maybe about 1962 to 63, 64, did you have any instrumental bands like the Ventures? So it was very rare to hear a completely instrumental track, but it's excellent. 11 is "When He Returns," which you already mentioned, and Larry does a very good cover of this Bob Dylan track. Now, the real thing, there's such a thing as value added, and the value added on the CD is the bonus tracks that are included in this one, and they were recorded live. Now, one of them is called Woman of God. It's kind of like that Proverbs 31 sort of woman, It's when Larry wrote it was obviously based on these scriptures, and he's kind of sending out a message for a young Christian male for the type of woman he should be pursuing if he is a Christian himself. That he wants a Christian woman and a godly woman, and he puts this into words in this song, Woman of God. Now the next bonus track, probably my favorite Christian rock song by Larry Norman, not Jerry Lee Lewis, Larry Norman, is Watch What You're Doing. Now this one is very odd. It's funny, and it's basically a message of what happens when you're a Christian and you get into sin, and where the consequences are not that great. It doesn't work very well. And the song's humorous, but it also has a serious message to it too. Interesting enough, I was watching a DVD where Larry had some special guests, and one of them was Black Francis, I think, from the Pixies band, who I think sang and played guitar in the last 3 or 4 numbers of Larry's show during his rock section. And one of the ones he played on was Watch What You're Doing. He even sang a verse or two of it. So that's standout cut. And of course, the next cut is Why Don't You Look Into Jesus, which is, what should we say, a classic Larry Norman rock track, and basically he kind of wrote one version while thinking of Janis Joplin, the outstanding blues rock singer from the 60s. And, Larry based a lot of his lyrics for this song on watching Janis on stage when they were playing the same festival, and he watched her set, and he could see, he said he was sad because he could see what a mess Janis was. Even though her music was still good and fans were really appreciative of her music, she looked in terrible physical shape. Her fingers were all yellow from cigarettes and shaking and sweating and all this thing due to substance abuse. So that was the basis for Why Don't You Look Into Jesus. Now, the last cut on this album is probably the one that some people will know who aren't sure who Larry Norman is. And that's Why Should the Devil Have All the Good Music? And that pretty well sums up his philosophy of Christian rock, which he really was the originator of, as far as I know. And for anybody who likes rock music, the message was pretty obvious. That most of the really good music coming out at that time, 60s, 70s, was secular music by classic rock bands who were secular and didn't sing about Jesus. Now, that's why Larry asked the question, why should the devil have all the good music? Because there's so many people who say rock and roll is from the devil. Then Larry turned that around and he says, well, why should the devil have all the good music? And he started recording still rock and roll based songs, but with Christian lyrics. So this is just, this is a absolute must of an album. I'm also going to do a review of Larry Norman's anthology, but that's going to come up at a later date. So, I just, and there's a book out right now, which I think I mentioned it in the written text of my Word blog post. And the title, of course, is Why Should the Devil Have All the Good Music? And I forget offhand the name of the author, but it's a very good book, and it's I've got both the Kindle version and the audiobook version, and I may review that yet, and I recommend checking that out too. Okay, so that's it for today, or at least for this first podcast today, the review of Copper Wires by Larry Norman. And thank you very much for listening, and we'll join you again later.